Hi, everybody. David Nour. I want to welcome you back to another episode of our Intelligent Growth live stream series. We're live on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. And my business partner, Jen Cords, and I host this every week, Tuesdays at noon Eastern. So I hope you'll mark your calendar and join us, where we really talk about growth at any. By the way, I don't know of an organization that can cut its way to growth. And you hear a lot of organizations at the moment, particularly in tech sector, cutting back. And some of that cut back is necessary. Let's be honest. In the pandemic era, they grew. They grew aggressively. They grew with a whole bunch of tailwinds. And it is a mistake to equate COVID or pandemic growth with forever growth. So if you added a whole bunch of girth during the pandemic, it's probably prudent to trim back. And I'm reminded of how several tech companies have announced layoffs, and last I checked, I don't think Apple has, because they were very prudent with their headcounts and with their growth, and they're intelligent, and they focus on enormous amount of profitable growth. And that's really the mindset that we're trying to bring to global P&L leaders, that I don't know of a business that doesn't need net new growth, yet growth at any cost is short-sighted. Growth needs to be proactively managed, just like you want to manage risk, just like you want to manage your talent agenda. So in our time together and with each of these episodes, what Jen and I try to do is bring a different lens, a different perspective, this idea of enabling intelligent and profitable growth. And we've been in a series. I'm really excited to launch this next book. It's Relationship Economics, with this fabulous mint green cover. And obviously, very talented Lynn Wilson did both the cover as well as the back illustrations and throughout, as well as some of the things I'm going to show you in the session today, which is this topic has been near and dear to my heart. And I continue to see really competent, really capable leaders struggle in this notion of being intentional about the relationships they choose to invest in. And the description of this session, as you read, talked about, have you noticed how some people are consistently very good at identifying, building, nurturing, sustaining value-based relationships, and others who may have very similar set of challenges, or they meet some of the same people, but they're challenged, they're struggling in how to turn those everyday contacts into invaluable relationships. So I've been a student of this for some time. I've been thinking a lot about why is that. I've been observing, and we're researching. We've got over 10,000 data points, a great deal in the last several years, which I've captured in this book, of individuals who do this well. I got to tell you, it comes down to a single word that I've grown to really admire. When you see it, you notice it. When it's consistent, you admire it, and you long for it in your own work, in your own world, in your own relationship ecosystem. And that's one of discipline. A disciplined approach to understanding relationship dynamics, a disciplined approach to understanding relationship ecosystems, a disciplined approach to stop calling this a soft skill, because we've proven over the last 2 decades that it should be intentional, strategic, and quantifiable. The discipline to not only gain the right skills in how to engage, how to influence, how to create value, but really the knowledge from the application of those skills, and probably most important for almost everyone is changes in your behavior. And behavior changes are seldom a switch. They're always a dial. So what behaviors do you need to dial up, and which ones should you dial back? Sociologists tell us, for example, that when we meet somebody else, we give a little, they take, they judge, they give a little back. And it's this natural exchange. Too much, too fast, and we're like, whoa, 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 back up. We just met. So the person really feels overbearing or overwhelming. And the layman's term for this is that person is just too much, or I can only handle so much of that person because there may be a larger than life personality, or they're just over the top in how they kind of come across. Conversely, you meet others and they're distant, they're very reserved, they don't say much, they're quiet, and that could also be misperceived as cold, distant, indifferent. So ideal if there's this natural exchange, right? Not too much, not too little, give and take. And that's when we feel, again, layman's terms, a connection, rapport, this perceived notion that this person doesn't necessarily have an agenda, or ideally the agenda is mutually valuable, right? So in researching and really focusing on individuals, and by extension teams and organizations who do this exceptionally well, we've identified 6 unique phases of strategic relationships. And that's really what I want to focus on in this session. And I would encourage you to jump in with your questions, with your comments. And I'll be in the Nour Forum, which is our private online community, and I'll share links to not just this session, but I'll share images and tidbits. I'm also with the launch of the book this month. If you pre-order the book, you also get access to an intro course that's in the forum. So you're welcome to check it out at your own leisure. Just Nour Group, nourgroup.com/forum would be a really good place to go check out. There's roughly 2,500 like-minded business professionals there that are really passionate about business relationships and real innovation and lasting change. So I hope you'll continue this conversation and join us in the Nour Forum. Again, nourgroup.com/forum. So back to the 6 phases. Think of this as the overarching. In a previous episode, Jen and I talked about top 10 reasons why most networking doesn't work. So I want you to get away from the prevailing mindset that meeting others is very transactional. And I really want you to think about the transformational nature of business relationships, the real material value add from business relationships. When you do get the book, kicks off chapter 3 of the book. And again, we're going to focus on the 6 phases of strategic relationships. So let me also share my screen, and we'll talk more about it. This is what the image looks like. I'm going to make it bigger and then really focus on highlighting the key sections in this concept, in this ecosystem that I think will be most relevant to you. So the most impactful, however you define success in turning everyday contacts into strategic relationships, I would submit to you starts on the left-hand side of this image. And it's really all about mapping. And it's really important for me to preface my comments. My goal here isn't, and it's never been, it will never be, to teach others how to be more manipulative. That's not it. This isn't about using people. It's really, once you embrace the notion that relationships are strategic, relationships are critical to your success, relationships are an investment. You cannot invest in everybody blindly. So how do you become more intentional? That intentionality is really critical. And what I'm trying to bring to the conversation is really systems thinking when it comes to this soft, nebulous thing that we all know is important to our careers, to our success, whether you're in sales or investor relations or leadership development or any industrial manufacturing. I genuinely can't think of certainly a management or leadership role that doesn't lend itself to building and nurturing relationships successfully. You want to get anything done beyond your own kind of self-improvement, you're going to need relationships to help you get there. So if you start on the left-hand side of the screen, mapping is all about line of sight. Mapping is all about, and again, some of you know I ride motorcycles. You also, if you drive, most of us use some sort of a navigation tool. It connects the dot between where I am now and where I'm trying to go. My current state and my future state. My journey, I like to say, from now to next. So mapping your journey. Here's where I'm trying to go. It could be a role. I want to be a vice president. I want to own a P&L. I want to, join a board. I want to any of those roles. So ideally, there's stair steps or some sort of an elevation in your career, in your job, in your role, in your realm of responsibilities. That could be one. Another one could be a personal preference. I was talking to an executive earlier. Listen, I've got some challenges, opportunities at home. I actually want to work less. I'm not ready to retire, but I want to work less so I can spend more time with family. And that could be a season in my life, or it could be ongoing. I'm talking to several executives who, during the pandemic, realized that they like their spouses and significant others and their kids and sometimes their grandkids, and they want to spend more time with them than going back to, the traditional expectations of an operating role of 80+ hour weeks. They don't want to do that anymore. So whatever that aspiration is, whatever that journey is, you have to start by mapping, not just what I'm going to accomplish, but how do I envision getting there? And I'm going to go one step further. And Jen and I will talk much more about this next Tuesday when we talk about strategic relationship planning. And I'm going to give you a glimpse of that before we wrap up. But if this is the overarching kind of why, if this is the overarching kind of critical phases you need to understand, strategic relationship planning in the next session will tell you the how. And we'll get very tactical in how do you become intentional? How do you really thrive in this ecosystem? But it starts with mapping. And mapping is fundamentally, and I've always believed, specificity conveys credibility. So don't tell me you want to be a vice president. Tell me why. Tell me, what does that look like? Really dive deeper into what do you envision that role becoming? And not just what's in it for you. Oh, I'll get more money, or I'm leading 10 people now. I'll lead 500 people then. That's great. Tell me how the organization, how the team and subsequently the organization will be better off with you in that position. Give me a vision. Give me, again, a line of sight into that journey. And as we break it down, the relationships that will be critical to your success. Most of my experiences point to the fact that journey is seldom parachute. You don't parachute from where I am today to, right, that next place. It's typically stair steps. It's typically a series of steps and counter steps. And by the way, it's also my experience, seldom a direct line, right? Sometimes you have to take 2 steps back to move 1 step forward. Sometimes you have to go laterally in your career or across the organization to extend and expand your horizons and again, realm of responsibilities. So if I have a line of sight, if I have really thought about what that journey, what that stair step may look like, then the opportunity becomes the middle. The middle, I want you to think of, now I've got a roadmap. Now I have a supposition. Now I have a hypothesis. And this is where thinking like a scientist, thinking in scientific methods really helps, because in the mapping phase, that's all you really have is a hypothesis. All you really have is a series of assumptions, assertions, perceptions of here's what I think that job will entail. Here's what moving to that geography or industry will entail. Here's what that role will encompass. And it's just your perceptions. It's hopefully intelligent, hopefully, well thought out, hopefully well researched. Here's what I envision that role to encompass. Here's why I think I would be really good at it. Here's not only the skills, knowledge, behaviors that I need, but here are the relationships that I believe can help me get from my now to next, right? So that's really what the mapping phase is all about. And in the book, I talk a lot about the critical aspects of this and really thinking about why this mapping and the steps that are involved kind of are important. With that roadmap, with that journey mapped out, now you're in the middle. And I want you to think of that really good way to think about the middle of this, the 4 phases right in the middle, as your relationship development engine. You have to, initially, you're relating. You have to be able to relate to others. I think one of the biggest turnoffs are, I don't know about you, but the LinkedIn messages or the barrage of emails we all get. Let me tell you what I can do for you. You don't know anything about me. You don't know anything about my business. You've done little to no homework. It's a cut and paste automated system. And sure, could you get lucky and once in a while it kind of hits? Maybe. But it's completely impersonal. And you can't relate to, it's all about you. You cannot relate to my challenges, my obstacles, kind of what I'm struggling with. So I coach a lot of people. You have to begin by relating. You have to begin by adding value. And I'm a big believer that every interaction, every single interaction is an opportunity to either enhance your relationships, your reputation, your credibility, or you're going to dilute it. You show up prepared, you show up having done your homework. Wow, the person took the time, made the time to anticipate what I need and think ahead of what I need and really work on showing up at their best. Conversely, you disheveled, haphazard show up and you're not giving the other side, the other person, whether it's a cup of coffee or a Zoom meeting, the reason to believe that meeting was important enough for you to prepare and do your homework and show up at your best. So every interaction, your promptness, your attention to details, your prep, and this is why I'm coaching people. Focus on fewer, but really build deeper, more meaningful relationships. Because if it's worth doing to this level of detail, this level of granularity and attention to the details. So you got to relate. And the reason that engine, the 4s in the middle, is they're not sequential. Unlike the strategic relationship plan that I'm going to show you, the roadmap that I'm going to show you in the next session, all 4 of those, as you can see by the arrows, are highly interrelated. Because as I relate to others, as I engage others, as I'm trying to add value to others, it cannot be an event. Have you, I'm sure this doesn't happen to you, but have you gotten calls from people you haven't heard from in years and they suddenly reach out and they want to catch up and what they're really looking for is the next job? And most of us want to be kind. Most of us want to be helpful. So we help them with some introductions and they forget everybody who helped them get there. Till 3 years from now, when they call you back, what do they want? Yeah, the next job. And if you've ever been around an alcoholic, this comment, I think, is going to resonate with you. We enable that behavior, right? We're kind, we help, and we kind of give without asking for anything in return. And as the more of that you do, the more you're signaling that behavior, those bad behaviors are okay. I've actually started calling out people on, I'm sorry, Jim. Is typically men, by the way, not exclusively, but typically men. When was the last time you called to see how I'm doing? When was the last time you called to ask how my business is going or how my kids are doing or the fact that mom passed away a couple of years from COVID? Oh, I'm so sorry. And you hear a whole bunch of excuses. So relating is not a standalone concept. You have to also sustain it. You have to, and again, full disclosure, we all get comfortable, in some ways complacent, in some ways we don't feel like we need to do that. And we get away from these practices that we know work for us. So you cannot relate to people at at an event, transactional incident, and then not talk to them for 3 years. So I've made a list of my top 100 business relationships. And I'm calling them and I'm emailing them and I'm telling them, you're important in my life, in my work, in my life, and their existing clients, their prospects, their colleagues, their different diverse pockets of my life. And I'm going to be more proactive in ensuring that we stay in touch. And not to pester, I'm not trying to sell them anything. I want to make sure that we're proactively staying in touch. And when I reach out, tell me about your priorities. Tell me what's going well for you. Tell me where you're struggling. Tell me how I can help. But what I'm doing in that process and what I coach people do in that process is sustain those. We all get busy. We all get pulled in a lot of different directions. There are a lot of demands on all of us. But if that relationship is important to your success, prioritize them and sustain your value creation, your value communication, capturing that value add, right? Which leads to nurturing. Nurturing, what does nurturing look like? Nurturing is inviting people you're in the same town with to an event that they may not be aware of. Ideal if it's an exclusive one. Ideal if it's a highly valuable one. This CEO is speaking at this event. Would you like to go as my guest? I'm going to this event and I thought it'd be useful to you. Would you like to join me? 1 year, my wife and I think, went to some 30, if not more, black tie events, typically for charity, typically a fundraiser. And we didn't just buy 2 tickets. I typically bought a table. And I would reach out to local relationships and say, we're going to this. Would you like to join us? Now it's black tie and it's for this great cause and it's a cause we believe in. And would you like to join us? And it was a fantastic opportunity to reconnect with relationships on their philanthropic causes and interests and connect good people to each other. But whether you do it philanthropically or otherwise, nurturing and sustaining that is critical. And you cannot, again, mathematically proven, an average individual has the bandwidth to manage about 100 to 150 relationships. Which ones? And how do you know? And if you can't invest in everyone equally, how will you then prioritize which relationships you're going to invest in? So that nurturing and sustaining, full disclosure, takes a whole lot of time and headspace and bandwidth and resources, and you cannot do this for everybody. So do you have a list of your top 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 relationships that are critical to your success? That's going to be imperative for you to relate to sustain, to nurture. Last but not least is also this idea of requesting. I'm still in that middle engine. Requesting is all about fundamentally and philosophically understanding that there's 3 types of relationship builders, right? I've been talking about this for 20 years. Adam Grant has also talked about it. And again, I think you'll be able to relate to the descriptions. First one is and it really is a spectrum. On one end is me-centric. It's all about me. It's my world. You're living in it. The very other end is other people-centric. It's I am but a servant in their world. There are some people that are unequivocally givers. God bless Mother Teresa. They get something very euphoric from just giving. They love to give. They want to give all the time. They're the office mom. They are the go-to person in that department, function, business unit. They love to give. The challenge is they become very sheepish when they need something. And they'll struggle in silence, or they'll struggle in isolation, or they won't tell anybody that they need help, even though they've helped a whole lot of other people. And most of us can't be just pure givers because we've got a job to do. And we're held to account for performance and execution and results. The other end of the spectrum, so there's first type is the giver. The other type is the taker. Have you ever met this type? The only time they call is when they want something. Hey, how's that report coming? The report that they need. Forget that you've got 4,372 other things on your list of things you got to get done. How's my report coming? Now, sometimes we're stuck in a hierarchical role and we've got to deliver that. But last time I checked, people prioritize projects, initiatives, work, asks, tasks for people they know and they like and they trust and they respect, and right. So givers, takers, the most astute type are relationship investors. And relationship investors fundamentally understand that if I've done the first four, the other four in the central box of relating, sustaining, nurturing, at some point I should be able to come request something of you. And I do this with my relationships. If I've added value, if I've coached, if I've given, if I've provided value to you, then I'm going to periodically, and again, this is critical, not to outwear your welcome, but I'm going to periodically ask you to give some of your time. I'm going to ask you for an introduction. I'm going to ask you for, I'm looking for someone. Who do you know? Can I trouble you for? Can I ask for your help? Could you do me a favor? And that's okay if I've done the other things in the middle. Said another way, it's a heck of a lot easier to extend your hand than to have your hand out. If I'm adding value, if I'm creating material value for you, your team, your organization, I have earned the relationship currency that I'd like to exchange, that I'd like to request something of you. The key is how you do that. Again, I've learned over the years, language is incredibly powerful. Going back to relating, if you know that Q1 is their busiest time of the year, or Q4 is end of the year and they've got to get a bunch of stuff done, I don't want to add to anybody's plate. I want to make sure that I'm constantly, every interaction, would it be okay? Are you available? Could I trouble you for, right? So language is really powerful. Timing is really critical, and the right level of ask. I get calls and emails. Would you please introduce me to that CEO or that board member? And I'm so desperately trying to be nice and not say, I beg your pardon. Are you really? You haven't added any value to my. And again, I'm not trying to keep. This isn't tit for tat. But you haven't added any value to my life or to my work, and you're asking for access to one of my most valuable relationships? I don't think so. And if we have an expression, I got to give Jennifer Bridges, longtime friend and owner of PDUs to Go, a credit for this. This is a Southern expression. If I'm not saying it, my face is showing it. I don't think so. Because I've worked really hard to build and nurture and sustain this really valuable relationship that you want access to. Who are you? And most people aren't going to willing to say that. So they just ignore that email or that call, or they come up with excuses. Well, versus putting people on notice that you haven't done enough of what's in the middle of the other three to then request that favor, that really big favor. So the level of the request is also critical. So as I mentioned, in the middle, the process, if you just joined us later, if you're watching recording of this, left-hand side, we're talking about 6 phases of really strategic, unique phases of strategic relationship development. This is the kickoff to chapter 3 of my brand new book, Relationship Economics, the 3rd edition. Mint green. Mint green is in. It's a new color. Mint green color. Lynn Wilson did the fabulous illustrations, both on the cover as well as throughout the book. But the process starts with this idea of mapping, this idea of being very intentional in your journey from now to next. In the middle, 4 unique phases. They're not sequential. They are very interrelated, as you can see by the arrows. It begins with relating. You have to relate to others. You have to empathize and sympathize with the challenges they're going through. You have to, I learned this from Bill Hogan, a longtime friend, client. He always says, assume good intent. Good people with good intent. They're busy. You're not a priority. Your value add isn't, or the perception of your value add isn't high enough on their priority list, on all that they've got going on. So you have to begin by relating. It cannot be a transaction. It cannot be an event. You have to also encompass sustaining that over some period of time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It is a marathon. Relationship building takes weeks and months and years. So it's a marathon. Are you willing? Are you able to sustain that over some period of time? Because most people will see right through, I'm here for a quick hit. I'm here for a transaction. I'm here for that one project. I'm here for that one deal. They'll see right through that. Can you, in that process, nurture it? So relating, sustaining, nurture. Think of those three first. How effectively am I relating to what they need, their challenges, their opportunities? How consistently am I sustaining that? Am I nurturing that with a unique value add each time? That nurturing also heavily depends on your own personal and professional growth. If you're not reading, you can't intelligently recommend a really good book to me the next time we talk. If you're not attending events, you can't tell me that the local Harvard Business School Club of Atlanta has a fantastic leadership breakfast series that you should go to. If you're not proactively engaged in, I'm using my local examples, Leadership Atlanta, and you don't attend those events and you don't nurture relationships with those classmates and alumni members, you have zero value add when you call me to nurture that relationship. So relating, sustaining, nurturing in the middle, critical. And when you do that, you can come to requesting. Request favors, the favor economy, right? Request time, request resources. I've reached out to some of my best relationships. We're launching this book. Would love to have you buy some bulk copies. And there's no, right? Not just to ask, which is, again, the power of those lines in the middle. As a token of my appreciation, I'm happy to deliver a keynote. I'm happy to put on a workshop. I'm happy to add value to you and your team. So requesting should be after you've done the others. Now, let me just touch up on the arrows. If you look at just what I just said, the example I just gave, I often try to connect one aspect of that phase with another. And again, we'll talk a lot more about this in the next session when I talk about, aligning relationships with the outcomes and this strategic relationship planning that we'll talk about. But I try to connect intentionally those. So what does that look like? When you introduce, think about it a second, two people in your network, two people that you believe would benefit from getting to know each other. You're investing in, you are adding value, you're nurturing two different relationships. This is the network effect, right? But I don't like to, again, increasingly we're all busy, but I don't like to just toss them over the wall. At a minimum, I make sure I speak with each of them. So, John, would it be, based on our last conversation and what you're trying to do, I think you should meet Beth. And here's why. Beth, would it be okay? I've got a really good friend, great client, really good partner, John, who's trying to do this, and I think it's a problem you just solved. Would you be so kind to talk to him? There's no financial incentive. Think about it a second. I don't have a dog in this fight. But in an effort, and you never know what comes out of you putting two competent, capable, good people together. So, Beth, can I introduce you to John? I put them together. Brief introduction. People are browsers, not readers. You don't need a dissertation. With LinkedIn and Google, there's no place for any of us to hide. So, brief introductions. Whenever possible, I try to invite both of them to coffee. Because now I hear how John positions himself and Beth's questions and vice versa. How does Beth introduce herself? Even if I just have a front row seat to that conversation, it's valuable to me. Increasingly, we're all busy. We're all pulled in a lot of different directions, and trying to coordinate 3 different people's calendars is always a challenge. So a lot of times I may invite both of them to lunch. Hey, are you available? Are you available? Can I buy lunch? Can I, invite and put 2 of you together? Look at what I'm doing. I'm not just sustaining and nurturing and requesting, but I'm tying those lines together. And I'm present and I'm in the moment. Now, I know what you're thinking. I don't have time to do all that. And when I hear someone says they're busy, you know what I hear? It's not important enough. That relationship isn't valuable enough. Because think about it. Relationships that are critical to our success, we'll invest in time, effort, capital, resources. Others, we kind of toss over the wall. Others, we send an email. Others, we send a text. So when I say focus on fewer, but create deeper, more real, more authentic, more longer term investments in your relationships, that's what I'm talking about. It's the lines. It's the connection between the middle of this engine that's going to set you apart from everybody else that talks a great game and nothing materializes from, yeah, we should do lunch. I've started to cringe to those comments, right? Yeah, we should connect. Okay, when's good for you? You have a calendar on you? Right? Because my calendar is always right here. We should touch base. When's good for you? This week or next week? Specificity conveys credibility and intentionality, right? So I can't reiterate how critical understanding, prioritizing. Again, I'll put this image in the Nour forum, our private online community, and I hope you'll come and download it, print it, put it up on your cube in your home office and in your work office. But this should be the overarching kind of mindset that this isn't an overnight anything, that this is critical to my success. And understanding these unique phases will set me apart. And my choice, it's always a choice. My choice to embrace and really bring a consistent discipline to each of these phases will be critical. Now let's talk about the fun part. And that is all the way to the right. And that's, by the way, the ice cream on top of the cake with the little strawberry that everybody wants. How do I capitalize on these relationships? And I've got to tell you, over the past 20 years, particularly the last 3, I've seen a lot of people get very good at relationship creation, and they struggle to bridge that to relationship capitalization. Said another way, a lot of people. You have a lot of pre-pandemic, you'd have a lot of coffee and meals. During the pandemic, you had a lot of Zoom meetings and virtual happy hours and scotch parties, and that's fantastic. And yet, when you need help, we have a role, right? Last time I checked, sales is measured by the revenues you close and deliver, and project managers got to deliver that project on time, on budget. Investor relations and fundraising, got to raise capital. We got to develop that real estate property. Whatever your end goals, end results are, if you haven't nurtured the relationships, you should have no expectations of being able to capitalize on them. So the right-hand side is you hitting your target, hitting your goals, hitting the outcomes you're after. And capitalizing on those relationships is also critical to every one of our respective successes. Everybody wants to jump over there without the willingness. And I'm telling you, after 20 years of studying this, it's not the ability. That's part of it. It's the willingness to do the incredibly difficult work necessary to be disciplined in how you build relationships, to be consistent in how you engage, how you influence, to add value in every interaction, to not just ask, but touch base and see how they're doing and how you can help. So if you want to capitalize on relationships, which most business professionals I meet unequivocally do, regardless of your level of seniority or role or function or industry. How prepared are you to do the incredibly difficult work necessary through these 6 phases? Do you consistently map? Here's my journey. Here's where I'm going, how I'm going to get there. Do you share that? Have you captured not just what I'm going to do, but the who questions? What relationships do I need along the way? Are you relating to people that are critical to your success? Are you sustaining that over some period of time? Are you nurturing it with every interaction? Are you requesting enough of them, enough appropriate, or the right level of requests? Could I trouble you for? By the way, if someone says no, hey, can I trouble you for that? No. That should be a in-your-face signal of you haven't done enough to nurture that relationship. It's not that person's fault. You have to start by looking in the mirror. I haven't done good enough job of building the value proposition for this person to say yes. I haven't done sufficient work on my branding for them to see me in this role, to consider me for that next vice president position, to trust me with that P&L. Look in the mirror. And when you do this middle part, when you do this fore and middle really well, that's when the right side becomes a natural extension. You still have to work at it. You still have to ask. You still have the position to ask. You got to make sure it's not transactional. But capitalizing on the right-hand side unequivocally is a byproduct of how well you understand, how well you focus on, how consistently you implement that engine in the middle. 6 unique phases in, of, about, within the ecosystem of strategic relationships. So if this has been of interest and value to you, here's the book. Here's the playbook, right? Again, this is available on pre-order, your favorite retailer. I will share. There's all kinds of great bonuses going on that we'll post in various channels. I would encourage you to come to the Nour Forum. Again, nourgroup.com/forum. That's our private online community. I would love to have you there. I'll post this image there that you can download. And again, I would encourage you to print it. I would encourage you to really think about it. Do your own self-assessment of how consistent are you in each of these phases. This is the overarching mindset. If you get this next session on strategic relationship planning, and the roadmap is really going to make sense to you. So on that note, let me just show you very quickly. Next week, Jen Cords and I, as part of the launch, I'm so excited. Next Tuesday, this book officially launches. So we've got a great lineup of senior executives that I'm going to interview all day on various social channels. Look to LinkedIn for more details. You can certainly also register and join us. I'll put that in the forum. But next week, Jen Cords and I are going to talk about this idea of how to be, again, intentional in aligning your relationship development efforts to the outcome. I'm going to talk about this idea of relationship-centric goals, this idea of your pivotal contacts, your current relationship bank, this idea of your relationship currency deposits. And when you do that in a systematic way, we call that strategic relationship planning. So it's a disciplined process that I've perfected over the last 20 years. We're building some tools and technologies around this. And by the way, if you noticed, the relationship bank is only the clear image in this for a very specific reason. It's the one that you're most known. The other ones are going to be fuzzy. The other ones are going to be less clear. The other ones are going to be a clay you're going to have to mold. But that one, you have enormous amount of control over. That one, you have enormous amount of opportunity to enhance, elevate. It's known. So we'll talk a lot more about that next week. So as I mentioned, every Tuesday, noon Eastern, I hope you'll join us for the Intelligent Growth live stream, where my partner Jen Cords and I talk a lot about how to be more intentional in intelligently, hopefully profitably growing your business, growing, personally, professionally, your team, the organization, your revenues. And we're live every Tuesday, noon Eastern. So I hope you'll mark your calendar and join us. As I mentioned, I'll be in the Nour forum right after this session. I often share links to the recording of this, downloads of it. Look for the RE3 launch group. That's where a lot of this will be. And as always, happy to answer questions, comments you may have. On behalf of my partner, Jen Kors, thanks for those of you who are able to join us live. And if you listen to the recording of this, come join us in the Nour forum, nourgroup.com/forum. Until next time, I'm David Nour with the Nour Group. Thanks for joining us. I look forward to seeing you next week, Tuesday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. We're launching this next book, Relationship Economics, 3rd edition. I hope you join us. Thanks, everybody. All the best. Bye-bye.